Usually, when we picture winning a massive conflict, the imagery that comes to mind is pretty standard.
Right, it's very cinematic.
Exactly. It's clashing armies, overwhelming destruction, the hero swinging the sword, the smoke clearing, to reveal victor standing over a completely shattered opponent. That's the cultural script we're handed for what victory looks like.
We're so conditioned to see it that way.
Yeah, but what if the absolute best way to win a war is to ensure that sword never actually leaves its scabbard?
It completely inverts our expectation. I mean, we are heavily conditioned to equate success in a conflict with the degree of physical damage inflicted on the other side.
Right.
But if you analyze the mechanics of deep strategy, destruction isn't a sign of dominance. It's actually a glaring sign of inefficiency.
And that brings us to our mission for this deep dive. We are welcoming you to an analysis of one of the most famous strategic documents in human history, which is Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Yes, specifically, we're looking at a curated excerpt from Part 3.
All right, Part 3, titled Attack by Stratagem. So our goal today is to decode this ancient text and understand why supreme excellence in conflict isn't about breaking things apart. It's actually about keeping things whole.
Which is such a powerful concept. The text immediately dispels the romantic myths of warfare. It reframes conflict entirely. It's not a test of brute strength or, willpower, but an intricate discipline grounded in behavioral psychology, rigid mathematics, and the absolute nuances of organizational leadership.
Let's start right at the premise, because the very first point Sun Tzu makes is a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
He argues that the absolute best approach in war is to take the enemy's country whole and intact.
Yeah.
He explicitly states that to shatter and destroy it is an inferior strategy.
Yeah, inferior.
And he extends this all the way down the chain of command. Like, it's better to capture an enemy, army, a regiment, or even a single company completely intact rather than destroying them. But I have to push back a little here.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, war is inherently destructive. I mean, if you were trying to conquer an opponent, isn't degrading their capabilities the entire point?
It seems counterintuitive until you look at the post-conflict reality. Think about the ultimate purpose of acquiring territory or overcoming a rival.
Okay.
If you obliterate their infrastructure, burn their crops, decimate their population, what exactly have you won?
A smoking wasteland, basically.
Exactly. You inherit a smoking wasteland. You immediately take on the massive economic and logistical burden of rebuilding the very thing you just spent a fortune destroying.
Oh, wow. I never really thought about the rebuilding costs like that.
Right. Sun Tzu is demanding that commanders look past the immediate dopamine hit of a battlefield victory. Preservation of the enemy's assets, turning their wealth and their labor into your wealth and your labor, is the actual power move.
That reframing perfectly leads into his definition of supreme excellence. He argues that fighting and conquering in 100 battles is not the pinnacle of skill.
No, not at all.
Supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting at all.
The greatest warrior is the one who renders the fight mathematically impossible before it even begins.
So to explain the mechanics of how you actually achieve that, the text outlines 4 tiers of generalship. And the highest form, the absolute pinnacle of strategic intellect, is to balk the enemy's plans.
Notice the mechanism there. To balk a plan means you are neutralizing the threat at the point of conception.
Before it even happens.
Exactly. You have to understand your opponent's incentives and vulnerabilities so intimately that you can dismantle their strategy before they even have the chance to execute it.
Imagine the foresight that requires.
Right.
It's not like winning a chess match by aggressively capturing pieces until you corner the king.
No.
It's more like a massive corporation quietly buying up the entire global supply chain for a specific microchip. By the time their rival is finally ready to announce a competing product, they look at the market, realize they physically cannot manufacture their device, and they just resign. They fold before opening a single factory.
That's a highly accurate modern translation. You've neutralized the competitor without a public price war or a massive marketing spend.
Right.
Now, if you lack the leverage to balk their plans entirely, Sun Tzu says the second best tier of generalship is to prevent the junction of the enemy's forces.
So if you can't stop the idea, you sabotage the logistics.
Exactly. You disrupt their ability to scale. You prevent their isolated components, whether that's allied armies, supply lines, or separate divisions, from uniting into a critical mass.
You just keep them separated.
Yes, you force them to remain fragmented, which keeps the threat manageable without requiring a massive head-on collision.
Then we get to the third tier, which is attacking the enemy's army in the field. It's striking that what we conventionally recognize as actual warfare is only the third best option.
It's way down the list.
Yeah, and finally we hit the absolute bottom of the barrel, the worst policy of all, which is besieging walled cities.
The transition from balking plans to besieging a city represents the entire spectrum of strategic capability.
The highest high to the lowest low.
Right. If balking a plan is pure foresight, a siege is the absolute collapse of it. It's what happens when a leader fails entirely to outmaneuver the opponent, is forced into a static, grueling battle of attrition.
Sun Tzu dissects the anatomy of a siege with terrifying precision, starting with the sheer time cost. He warns that you should avoid besieging walled cities, if at all possible, because the preparation alone is an agonizing wait.
It's massive.
He calculates it will take 3 whole months just to prepare your mantlets. Those are those large portable shields, right?
Yeah, large wooden shields on wheels, basically.
Right, so 3 months for the mantlets, movable shelters, and various implements of war.
And keep in mind that is purely the preliminary construction phase. You aren't attacking the city yet. You are dedicating an entire quarter of a year simply to building the tools required to survive standing outside the enemy's walls.
And it doesn't stop there. He says it takes another 3 months to pile up mounds of earth against the walls to create ramps. So an army is sitting idle for half a year.
6 full months.
6 months of manual labor, burning through rations, exposing troops to disease, weather, desertion, all before a single genuine assault begins.
Think about the psychological toll that takes on an encampment, and more importantly, on the mind of the commander. This is where Sun Tzu transitions from military logistics to behavioral psychology.
Okay, how so?
He pinpoints the exact emotional breaking point of a flawed leader.
The phrase he uses is chilling. He says the general, unable to control his irritation, will launch his men to the assault like swarming ants.
Yes, swarming ants.
The fact that a foundational military text blames a catastrophic failure entirely on a commander's irritation is staggering. It's not the thickness of the enemy's walls or the superiority of their archers. It is a sheer lack of emotional regulation.
It's a profound commentary on the dangers of ego in leadership. The general has spent 6 months watching his supplies dwindle and his prestige wane.
He's just fed up.
Exactly. His impatience and sheer frustration override any remaining strategic logic. He essentially throws a tantrum, but he uses human lives as the currency. Describing the soldiers as swarming ants strips away any illusion of tactical sophistication. It paints a picture of a chaotic, disposable mass being thrown at a wall out of pure spite.
And the outcome is mathematically horrific. Sun Tzu states that because of this emotional outburst, 1/3 of the men are slaughtered, and the town still remains untaken.
A third of the army.
A 33% casualty rate.
Yeah.
Thousands of lives lost for absolutely zero strategic gain.
This perfectly crystallizes why the skillful leader obsesses over stratagem. Brute force, especially when driven by frustration, destroys your own assets just as quickly as the enemy's.
Right.
The ultimate objective is to subdue the enemy's troops without fighting, capture their cities without laying siege, and overthrow their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field.
He concludes that thought by noting that if a leader keeps their forces intact, they can dispute the mastery of the empire without losing a single man. But this presents a massive practical challenge, right?
Sure.
If you are a commander in the field, and you know you must avoid the emotional trap of a siege, how do you actively decide when to engage? Human beings are naturally emotional under pressure.
You have to build a system that overrides human emotion. You remove ego, pride, and irritation by replacing them with an objective mathematical framework.
So relying on the numbers instead of your gut.
Yes. Sun Tzu introduces a cold calculus for engagement based strictly on troop ratios.
And he gives specific directives for this. If your forces are 10 to the enemy's 1, you surround them. If it's 5 to 1, you attack them. But if you are twice as numerous, so a 2 to 1 advantage, he says to divide your army into 2.
Right.
And I want to pause on that one. Why divide your forces when you only have a slight advantage? Doesn't that just create 2 evenly matched, riskier fights?
It seems like it, but it's actually about cognitive overload and tactical leverage. If you have a 2 to 1 advantage and you attack straight on, the smaller force only has to defend one front.
Oh, I see.
They can dig in and concentrate their resources, but if you divide your army, you force the smaller opponent to split their already inferior numbers to defend multiple flanks.
That stretches them out.
You stretch their supply lines, you force their commanders to make split-second decisions on 2 fronts, and you exploit the resulting chaos. You're using your numbers to create complexity, not just impact.
Okay, the math gets even tighter. If you are equally matched, you can offer battle. If you are slightly inferior in numbers, you can avoid the enemy. And if you are quite unequal in every way, he explicitly states you must flee.
And that is often the hardest pill for a proud leader to swallow, the concept of mandated retreat.
I really want to challenge this point.
Go for it.
We are culturally obsessed with the scrappy underdog who stands their ground against impossible odds, fighting to the bitter end. But beyond the romance of it, if your standing rule is to literally run away every time you are outnumbered, doesn't that make your strategy entirely predictable?
Well,
Couldn't an enemy commander just fake superior numbers to continuously push you off the board?
that's a valid operational concern, but Sun Tzu's system relies heavily on accurate intelligence, which is a whole other aspect of his philosophy. You aren't fleeing based on rumors or shadows.
Right, you need the actual numbers.
Exactly. You retreat based on verified metrics. If the math genuinely dictates you are unequal in every way, staying to fight isn't bravery, it's a malpractice. Sun Tzu delivers a harsh reality check. He says though an obstinate fight may be made by a small force, in the end, it must be captured by the larger force.
So an obstinate underdog doesn't win a moral victory. They just end up as prisoners of war.
Precisely. Fleeing in this context is an act of supreme discipline. It is mathematical self-preservation. You are preserving the asset, your army, so you can reposition, gather resources, and fight another day when the calculus is finally in your favor.
It prevents the commander's pride from destroying the state's military capability.
Exactly.
But even if a general internalizes all of this, even if they perfect the math, remove their ego, make the right call to retreat, they don't operate in a vacuum. Sun Tzu makes a hard pivot here from the battlefield to the boardroom, essentially.
Yes, he shifts to the chain of command.
Right. Specifically, the relationship between the general and the sovereign ruler.
He establishes a vital metaphor first. He refers to the general as the bulwark of the state.
The structural integrity of the entire nation rests on this position.
Right. If the bulwark is complete, the state is strong. If it's defective, the state is weak. Because the stakes are that high, interference from the civilian leadership, the ruler becomes the most dangerous variable in the entire equation.
He outlines 3 distinct ways a ruler can inadvertently bring total misfortune upon their own army. The first is what he calls hobbling the army. This happens when a ruler commands the army to advance or retreat, completely ignorant of the fact that the army physically cannot obey the order.
We see this constantly in modern organizational structures.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the executive sitting in a corner office hundreds of miles away, staring at a spreadsheet or a map, and issuing mandates that completely ignore the realities on the ground.
Right, like demanding a deadline that's physically impossible.
Exactly. They don't account for weather, supply chain bottlenecks, or morale. Demanding the impossible fractures the operational integrity of the team.
The second way a ruler ruins an army is even more systemic. It's attempting to govern an army in the exact same way as they administer a kingdom. Sun Tzu notes this causes restlessness in the soldiers' minds.
Yes.
Let's dig into the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
Why is treating an army like a kingdom so disastrous?
Well, think about the operating system of a civilian government. A kingdom is designed for stability. It relies on slow bureaucracy, endless deliberation, strict legal precedents, and predictable routines.
It's supposed to move slowly to prevent rash decisions.
Precisely. An active military campaign is the polar opposite environment. It is highly volatile, dynamic, and lethal. It demands ruthless efficiency, instant adaptation, and rapid decentralization of decision-making.
So it's like trying to run an active emergency room using the rule book of the Department of Motor Vehicles.
That is a perfect parallel. The systems are fundamentally incompatible. If you force an army operating in a life-or-death environment to wait for peacetime bureaucratic approvals before they can maneuver, you paralyze them.
Yeah, makes sense.
The restlessness Sun Tzu describes is essentially institutional dread. The soldiers realize their own rigid protocols are going to get them killed.
Which flows right into the third fatal error a ruler can make, which is employing officers without discrimination. The text says this happens through ignorance of the military principle of adaptation to circumstances.
This is the danger of prioritizing peacetime metrics over wartime realities. In a capital city, a ruler might promote an officer because of their noble lineage, their political connections, or, their skill at courtly etiquette.
Right, kissing up to the boss.
Exactly. But none of those traits translate to tactical competence in a muddy field.
And the text explicitly states that this shakes the confidence of the soldiers. If you're an infantryman and you realize the person commanding your flank got the job because their uncle is a duke, Not because they understand troop ratios, your trust in the chain of command just evaporates.
And when you synthesize these three failures, issuing impossible orders, imposing slow bureaucracy on a dynamic environment, and promoting based on nepotism, you trigger a catastrophic chain reaction. Sun Tzu points out that when an army becomes restless and distrustful, trouble is guaranteed to come from other feudal princes.
Your external rivals recognize the internal rot.
Yes. He concludes that this civilian interference is simply bringing anarchy into the army and flinging victory away. It's a profound realization. You don't even need the enemy to outsmart you. You can completely defeat yourself through structural mismanagement before a single arrow is fired.
So, knowing all these failure points, the emotional sieges, ignoring the math, the micromanaging rulers, how does an organization immunize itself? Sun Tzu synthesizes everything into a definitive checklist, which he calls the 5 essentials for victory.
This serves as the master thesis for this entire section of the text.
If we group these essentials, the first 2 are really about operational math. He says victory goes to the leader who knows when to fight and when not to fight, and second, who knows how to handle both superior and inferior forces.
That reinforces the cold calculus we discussed. Mastery requires adapting your tactics precisely to the numerical reality you face and having the discipline to walk away when the math demands it.
The next 2 essentials shift toward culture and preparation. He says victory belongs to the army animated by the same spirit throughout all its ranks, and to the leader who, prepared himself, waits to take the enemy unprepared.
This is about alignment and patience. From the newest recruit to the seasoned general, there must be a unified purpose that cuts through the friction of conflict.
Right.
And regarding preparation, it ties back to stratagem versus siege. You meticulously build your advantage in the shadows, waiting for the opponent to make an emotional, impatient mistake.
And the final essential connects back to our previous point about the chain of command. He says victory goes to the leader who has military capacity and is not interfered with by the sovereign.
Complete autonomy for the competent expert.
Right. Complete autonomy.
The general must be allowed to act as the bulwark, and the civilian leadership must have the profound restraint to step back and let the professional execute the strategy.
You know, when you look at those 5 essentials together, a really striking observation emerges for the listener. Almost all of them focus entirely on internal management.
Right.
Knowing your own limits, fostering shared spirit, personal preparation, keeping your own boss out of your way. Does this mean Sun Tzu believes the greatest threat to an army isn't the enemy, but the army's own lack of self-awareness?
That is the core revelation of the text. The enemy across the field is merely a condition of the environment, like the weather or the terrain. The true variable that dictates the outcome is internal clarity.
Because if you're a mess inside,
Right. If your organization is internally fractured, impatient, or crippled by ego, the enemy barely has to lift a finger.
which perfectly sets up the grand finale of this section. It is arguably the most recognizable strategic maxim in human history. Sun Tzu writes, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles."
It's the ultimate synthesis. Knowing the enemy is what allows you to balk their plans. It allows you to calculate the troop ratios accurately.
Right.
Knowing yourself is what prevents you from launching men like swarming ants in a fit of irritation. It's what stops a ruler from hobbling their own forces.
He then lays out the consequences of imbalance. He says, if you know yourself but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer a defeat.
You might have incredible internal cohesion, but without accurate intelligence on your environment, you are essentially gambling. You might win on sheer willpower occasionally, but it isn't sustainable strategy.
And the final, fatal warning, if you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle.
That is the ultimate portrait of a doomed endeavor. It's the arrogant ruler demanding impossible results from an irritable general who is walking blindly into a trap. It guarantees total destruction.
To pull all this together, Part 3 of The Art of War forces a complete reevaluation of what it means to be powerful. True strategy is taking the objective intact, not reducing it to ashes.
Exactly. It demands the emotional intelligence to avoid grueling battles of attrition, the discipline to apply cold mathematics to your engagements, and the self-awareness to retreat when necessary.
And obviously it requires an organizational structure that empowers expertise rather than suffocating it with bureaucracy.
It fundamentally shifts the strategic mindset from, how do I apply enough force to destroy this obstacle, to, how do I maneuver so flawlessly that the obstacle renders itself irrelevant?
And that leaves you with one final, lingering question to ponder. The next time you find yourself entering into a conflict, whether it's a massive project at work, a heated debate, or a major life hurdle, ask yourself, are you blindly preparing for a grueling siege, or are you looking for the stratagem that lets you win without fighting at all?